G'day, it's your old mate Matthew here on the Yarnsman podcast. Today we have Robbie Harlow. We get into a few things with Robbie, including depression and anxiety. If you find that triggering, please do take time to step away and visit our website to get some support resources. Hope you enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome to the Yarnsman podcast. This evening we have Robbie Harlow with us. Robbie's an all-round good guy and really passionate about code. It's good to have you on, Robbie. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Matthew, and really happy to be on. So, yeah, busy day, but all's well.
Yeah, well, a positive end to the day with a good yarn, eh?
Indeed.
Well, jumping into it, what have you struggled with in the last week?
Yeah, I guess the last week's been interesting with me with a bit of work in sport. So, I spent 3 days of the week up in the North Island with work, sort of living out of a suitcase, going between Tauranga and Auckland. Obviously, living in hotels or motels, hire cars, Uber Eats, trying to figure that out as I guess trying to have a bit of time for myself to go for a run or whatever when it's dark and don't know where I am. And then I spent the weekend up in Manurewa in South Auckland for a touch camp. So that was living on a floor of a rugby club in with our mattresses with about 40 other blokes. So not a lot of sleep, a lot of snoring, but you got to go to the Warriors as well. So, but I guess which was freezing and they lost, but that's by the by. But yeah, I think the hardest thing was just sort of being away from home, being away from routine, and you're not just able to sort of keep control of your controllables. So yeah, I think that's been the hardest thing, and just being away and not sleeping in your own bed.
Yeah, full on, but some good times in there, no doubt. Looking ahead to the next week, what's something you want to work on?
Yeah, so for me, I'm back in Christchurch all week. So it's about finding that routine again, getting myself out of bed when it's cold in the mornings, going for a run or a walk or a stretch, and you're trying to keep that routine. I'll find that when I do that, the day goes a lot better. But it's obviously with being the middle of winter, it's quite easy to stay in bed and it hit snooze, and then you sort of wake up feeling drowsy. So for me, it's just making sure I'm doing the right things there. And yet finding that routine again, and then on the weekend just having that time to myself that I haven't had over the last couple of weeks, getting some personal admin chores done, and then hopefully getting down to watch some rugby as well.
Yeah, I hear you with all of that. The getting back into running for me, it's like, there's a fine window between probably 12 and 2 p.m. If I haven't booked any meetings, I might go for a run. Those meetings have been taking up that time.
Yeah, that's it. The lunchtime run's got a bit of a must, I find.
Yeah. What are you proud of?
So I guess I've been quite fortunate with, I guess, work in sport, to sort of been all around the world and seen and experienced some pretty awesome things. So I guess I've managed to see a lot of things, meet a lot of people, and I'm pretty happy with what I've done professionally and personally and on the sports field. So I think I've sort of been able to develop some great relationships with people, and good family man as well. So in terms of extended family. So yeah, I guess I'm really proud of what I've achieved there throughout my life.
Cool. I like that. What gives you hope?
Yeah, I guess that's a bit of an interesting question. Certainly had some far darker days in the past, but managed to work my way through them. And then I guess the fact that I've now managed to find different things that I can fall back on to actually give myself that positiveness in my life again, and be able to focus on what's in front of me. And yeah, certainly, even though getting older and slower and less wise, certainly finding that just the change in life and being out of control. I guess what's in my circle means I'm sort of being a bit more focused on the present and what I'm looking forward to, which is great. So yeah, a lot of good things in the pipeline, and enjoying work. So everything's sort of falling into place there.
I'll have a follow-up one on the hope piece. It's like with your Haora role with Marist, do you find that dealing with the younger fellas gives you hope?
It does, and I think like dealing with different generations, both in the workplace both in the sports and in the rugby space, there's very different elements to who you deal with there. And I guess I've got less of a feel for the younger ones coming through, other than, well, I've actually coached some of them when they were at high school, fortunate enough to play with them, but they're very different from, I guess, my generation. So there is that hope, and like you do see it in how they're educated and what their values are, which are very different to what we were. And yeah, you definitely do see that there as well.
Yeah, well, I think we've kind of talked about that before, and we'll get to see it firsthand in the changing sheds next week.
That's right, absolutely.
So jumping into the meatier part of the podcast, what's what's a time in your life where you've struggled and you want to share that with kind of a message of hope for us?
Yeah, sure. I guess as you sort of stereotypical rugby player, you sort of bottle all your feelings up, and you'd be considered a bit of a pussy or if you sort of brought any of these feelings out, So I'm certainly from that generation. So it's basically just show up and get on with it, turn up for work, just get on with it. And I guess it's sort of, I spent a lot of time in the military. When I came back, I sort of opened up a gym, and that was hard work. And I basically found myself working sort of 60, 70-hour weeks, which sort of averaged out to be far less than minimum wage, trying to get my gym off the ground, trying to study towards my masters, trying to play rugby, trying to have a relationship, and also working for pretty much working for love, like labouring and trying to balance everything. So I'm pretty exhausted the whole time, completely overworked myself. And I guess for me, I've always sort of been full noise at everything, but I've thrown myself into fitness 110%, or like I'll play rugby and then Saturday night will be a bender with the boys. And that was the whole way through winter. Then you'd be slow, you'd do nothing on a Sunday. Monday you'd still feel rubbish, and then the cycle would just keep repeating. And then summer was an extra day because you could have a few more beers on the Friday.
And I'd need to just jump in and ask, what colour Powerade did you have on a Sunday?
Well, it's a good question. Either usually a blue or red, but I didn't mind the dark green from time to time, but wasn't usually a lemon lime person.
Yes.
Yeah, so, and I guess that all sort of spiraled and that sort of thing, and yeah, it was hard work, I guess, trying to keep my head above the water, but like you never ask for help, and it was just repetitive cycle, and it was just burning myself out. So sort of, I guess those around me, I guess, probably bore the brunt of that with me not having enough time for them, and yeah, I guess sort of caught in my own little vortex.
And so with all of that, with, I guess, going through all that process, and I guess this is a common thing, right, of bottling it up, working hard, and we're of that age where that's what you did. I mean, I suppose there's generations before us have done that as well. Was there a breaking point for you?
I guess there wasn't like a breaking point per se, but I was fortunate enough to go over to Spain, where I'd been before, and join back up with the rugby club. And that was basically sort of seeing as I just needed to have a break and step back. I managed to get rid of the gym, deal with a bit of that. There's financial pressure there as well, because I'd sort of basically pulled all my savings into it, etc. So yeah, I guess I was pretty close to bankruptcy. In fact, like, I could have gone bankrupt, but I sort of set up with the bank in order just to pay back. So so I paid back the loans, even though I didn't need to personally, and I sort of wanted to do that. So I guess that was me not admitting that I'd stuffed up, but just wanting to control the situation I've got myself into. So that was something I wanted to do that I didn't need to do. But yeah, I went over to Spain, and I basically just played and coached rugby for about 4 or 5 months, and that was all I had to do other than sort of work 20 hours a week. So all of a sudden I had all those stresses taken away from myself, all those pressures, and it was great. I mean, I still had beers after a game in Spain, but yeah, it allowed me to just, I guess, focus on myself for a bit, which was quite good. So I guess, yeah, there's a few moments of reality checks there that I was able to sort of semi-focus myself. But even then I still wouldn't say I was there. That was almost like I guess that saved me from the storm a little bit. And then I spent a couple of years in Russia, which was another interesting situation. So again, that was with rugby. 2 years over there through COVID, basically by myself in isolation for 70 days in a 2-bedroom apartment by myself. So very little contact, studying my masters at the same time. And basically there were times where I just wouldn't get paid for a month in Russia. And it was like, well, just deal with it. It was like, well, I've still got debts back home. So that was really stressful as well. But like when I was working, it was good. But then I guess being by myself sort of came back to the point. I didn't actually want to go back, but I had a contract. So I went back, saw out the rest of that contract, and eventually came home sort of, must have been November, that COVID year when everything was still sort of half shut down. So caught COVID in my last couple of days in Russia, and then spent 17 days in isolation once I got back to New Zealand. So again, that was a bit of a blessing in disguise. It took me 81 hours to get home from Russia. Plane broke down in Singapore. We had to sleep on the floor, and I think spent 26 hours with nothing in Singapore airport. No one there, like a ghost town, which was interesting. Then COVID in Auckland. And basically, like it was, I was so happy to be back in New Zealand, and like everyone goes, well, what did you do? I was actually just decompressed. So that was good too. But again, sort of wasn't out of the woods yet. Sort of, it still all came to head being back in Christchurch, being back involved in rugby again. Sort of, I guess even though I decided not to be involved with rugby again, have a bit of a break, I sort of managed to fall back in and end up playing again, and big Saturday nights all over again, and it was that repeated cycle. And sort of it did come to a breaking point. I thought, actually, I've got to do something about this. And I was fortunate enough to be working with a company that provided EAP, or the Employment Assistance Program. And I thought, well, actually, I've got to do something about this. So I actually booked in for a couple of appointments with. It wasn't a psychologist, but so someone that didn't have a degree. I'm not entirely sure, but they were great. And so for me, that was, I guess, me starting to actually come out of the fog. And that was great. From then, I read a couple of books that I was recommended, and they made a big difference. And I was actually able to start making a lot of those positive steps. And I guess you still have your bad days, but since then I've been able to, I guess, talk about what was going on, why it was going on. But also understand that when I was in one of those spaces, how to get myself out of it, and what positive things I could do. Like always thinking that I'll go and do some fitness, but in reality, like fitness can be a bit of a drug as well as, I guess, alcohol. You can overdo it, and it was just 110% at something. I'd go and like. I got into triathlons. The first triathlon I sort of signed up for was an Ironman. So it's just from one extreme to another. But I guess that's sort of my personality. I think for me it was able to start dealing with that. Okay, well actually, how do I deal with this? And then for me it was, I guess, closing my inner circle, and I've got really good group of friends and family and support partner and that sort of thing. So that's certainly been a big part of, I guess, you're coming to grips with it all, and you're making positive choices as well.
Mate, there's some fantastic stories in there. The Russia thing, I'd love to talk about that some more, but perhaps not for here. Taking a step right back, how do you feel with the word failure? I classify myself as a successfully failed entrepreneur, and I wear that with a badge of honor. The fact that you're able to repay those loans, and you didn't have to, that's bloody fantastic. But what do you think of that word failure, or do you think that was a failure or just a learning experience?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, actually, because I guess if you look at it on the surface, it was a failure because I wasn't able to develop my business into something sustainable and ongoing. But I guess if I look back and had my time again, would I do it again? It's like, well, I probably wouldn't want to put myself through the stress of it, but I got so many good learnings and experience out of it. So in that way, I don't see it as a failure. I see it as a building block. But did the business fail? Well, I guess ultimately yes. But in order to, we're going to fail at a lot of things. But so it's It's what you actually take out of it to turn it around. It's your lessons learned basically.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And yeah, as I say, I think you should wear it with a badge of honor, and we should talk about it. What were the lessons you learnt from actually getting out there and doing that, and kind of share that from there? Um, in terms of that kind of the team sport environment or what have you know of the drinking and things, do you think we've moved on from that, or do you think
It's,
that it still exists?
I think it does, but not necessarily. I mean, again, I'm old now, over the hill, being over 40 now. So I guess I don't have as much finger on the pulse, but I feel like it's changing a lot. Certainly my generation, like every Saturday, let's see how many jugs we can drink at the club rooms, and then go to town and get the old vodka lemonades and see how many of those we can drink, Whereas now, I think, dare I say it, there's more maturity into how people are drinking. They're not necessarily out to clock all the alcohol in town. I mean, I could be wrong, but it does feel like that's sort of starting to move away from that part of society. I think, I guess the younger generation is a lot more accepting of who everyone is. And I think you see that you go around a pub now and you see people drinking light beers, you see people drinking non-alcoholic beers, you see people drinking Cokes, and no one will bat an eyelid, which I think is fantastic. Whereas, yeah, I mean, good luck doing that 20 years ago.
Well, that's right. I mean, me just coming through a sober spell or coming to the end of a sober spell, it's been fine because actually the non-alcoholic beers taste bloody fantastic.
Yeah,
And I don't know whether that's a slippery slope to alcoholism because you can drink a few of those quickly. But we come from the same era of that
that's
was
right.
our upbringing, and that's what everyone did. So it's good to see that that's changing. You mentioned a couple of books. What were they?
Yeah, so I guess the book that really was beneficial for me was, I think, the book of Overthinking, by Gwendolyn Smith. And I've recommended that to a lot of people. It's not written as a you must do this, but it provides insight. Like, I knew I had problems and issues, and yeah, it doesn't skirt around that, but and you sort of have ideas how to deal with them, but you don't. But for me, it was the way that the book presented the problems and different things you can do that actually sort of made it more real and actually able to put those into practice. So, and it wasn't a hard read. Had lots of, I guess, funny anecdotes. It wasn't written like a scripture or a non-fiction book. It was supposed to sort of interact with the reader, which I thought was good, and yeah, it just made it a lot more approachable.
Cool. Well, I'll put a link to that book in the description. I think that's what we call it. And I'll also have to read it myself. Yeah, you talked about the positive things in your life and kind of I would say battling an addictive personality when it comes to signing up to Ironmans and things like that. How have you kind of managed that in a post rugby world?
Yeah, so I'm still doing endurance sports and that sort of thing, but for me, it's about making sure I've got that balance. And so like, I don't spend all my time training. If I miss a training session, it's not the end of the world. Um, I never want to be a professional triathlete or anything like that. So I'm a bit of a realist there. I like to try different things, get out in the hills. So for me, yeah, I do have a coach, but I guess he knows where I stand in terms of wanting to try different things. And yeah, I mean, it's being, I guess, realistic about what your goals and expectations are and not being afraid to discuss those with people around you, which is, I think, a big thing. And I think going back to that book of overthinking, it's quite good because I guess ruminating about things that have gone wrong in the past is a massive problem, but also thinking, well, what else could I have done? Which is like, well, hang on, it's happened now. So what is the best way to deal with it moving forward? And again, that sort of goes into that planning phase of, well, hang on, I'm doing these endurance sports, but I've got to work, I've got to socialise, I've got to be a family member as well. So what does that look like? And are you tipping too much into one bucket?
I love that. Just some real sage advice there, and I guess looking ahead to next week, or just actually, from younger fellas coming through and who might be who might be going into a similar position. What advice would you have for them?
Well, the
Read that
biggest,
book.
yeah, you certainly read that book. Like if you're not comfortable to talk to anyone, I'd 100% read that book, and then even like if your work's got the ability to use EAP services, yeah, I mean they're not the be all and end all, but it gives you someone to talk to that you've got no idea who they are. You're probably never going to see them again, even though if you live in Christchurch, Christchurch is a small place. But you're not going to be judged on anything you say, and a lot of it is just getting that weight off your shoulders to start off with, and then you can start to look at how you're going to deal with it. So, which is where that book's good. But I think another big thing is I'm not afraid to talk to people about issues I've had or different solutions. I mean, I'm not going to preach to anyone, but I guess, well, using the phrase, my door's always open, or I'm always available for a chat or anything like that. But I mean, I've always been, I like to think on the outside, a really happy, outgoing, smart ass person. So I guess for people to understand that, I guess that I struggle with anxiety and a bit of depression, then I think it's good for people to realise, okay, well, I never knew that, and I got that a lot. And I still take antidepressant pills, and I don't think there's a problem with that. And I think it's normalising, I guess, mental health. And I think that's a really important thing, and that's a big shift that we need to make. I mean, everyone's aware of it. I mean, every November we have your mental health day and men's health, etc. But yeah, I mean, it's all good to talk about it, but how are we actually normalising it other than making it a week or a day where we focus on it?
Yeah, you're 100% there. It's not just about one day. It's about, how do we get this ingrained into normal life of being able to have a decent yarn. And, thank you so much for you stepping up and sharing your story, sharing your yarn on the podcast, but to continue to do that out in the community. So, mate, bloody good on you.
Thanks a lot, and yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity as well.